where it talks about the watchman. And the watchman was to warn people. And if the watchman didn't do it, then the watchman was going to be in trouble. He was the one who was going to stand before in judgment because he didn't warn the people. And the other part about was if the watchman warns people, then it's going to be on them if they don't listen. We were trying to, we're doing these things, trying to do this stuff to be a watchman. But if people don't want to hear, if people don't want to come and participate, then I don't know what else to do. I really don't. And just remember that we're all going to stand in judgment. Him and I are going to be responsible if we didn't do what we were supposed to do in trying to help you guys get to that point too. But if we can do what the best that we can, then it's going to be on somebody else. It's not going to be on us. Brother Webster, go ahead. I just wanted to point that out.
And see, I love to hear an elder exhort the flock. You don't hear a lot of that. That was very encouraging. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about 5 frequencies of evangelism now. We're going to continue. We're going out of order on the sheet, but I decided this would be a better follow-up to what we just did. So 5 frequencies of evangelism. And we're going to do this from 2 perspectives. We're going to talk about from the individual Christian perspective and then from the congregation. Some of them are the same, but a number of them are different for the congregation than they are on the individual level. Now, what I'm going to say is not for everybody. I'm not up here to say every Christian ought to do all 5 of these things or you're going to be lost for not being an evangelist. No, these are, we all must do evangelism. That's a part of Christianity. But the frequency of it and how we implement these principles will be personal decisions. And some of them have to do with our talent. You know, God gave each of us unique abilities that differ from anybody else. That ties into the body concept. Like, you know, your hand is uniquely qualified to do some things that your pancreas cannot do. But your pancreas can do something that your hand can't do, right? So I might just be the little fingernail of the church body, but I got a purpose. You know, if you got that little fingernail in the quick, would you know it? Yeah, so that little part of the body that seems insignificant has a part to play. All of us have something we can do. But I know who I'm talking to. I mean, some of you have driven hours to be here. Some of you, this is your 13th lesson in 5 days. Some of you took off work, stay out of school. Others out of work today and have come to spend part of the week with us. So I know I'm talking to the cream of the crop. And I know that I'm not talking to people that this is going to fall on deaf ears for. But some of these things more implementable at your age, your stage, than maybe somebody else. So here we go. 5 frequencies of evangelism. When you look at time, the Bible says in Psalm 90, 10-12, the only psalm written by Moses, the oldest psalm, teach us to number our days and to apply our hearts unto wisdom. So you've got about 29,000 days if you live an average lifespan. And a good number of those days have already passed for all of us, and some of us are already in the red, right? You know, don't think too hard about that. But I know this, I want to use the rest of my days to the fullest service of God. Whatever it is, all of us could say years I spent in vanity and pride, carrying out my Lord was crucified. We might not all be able to mean that literally, but we could all say we've all not used our time as wisely at parts of our lives than we should have, but we can't change that. We can repent of it, but what we can do is start today and use our time as wisely as we can. And it may be the Lord will extend our lives here like He did Hezekiah for 15 years if He's got a work that we can do for Him, you know? And I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, it's good to go on, but it's also good to be able to serve Him here, as Paul said. All right, so here we go. If your frequencies are day, week, month, quarter, annual. Now we're going to assign responsibilities to each of those frequencies. Colin and I were talking yesterday about a friend of his that writes, what was it? YBH, right? YBH, either in his Bible or on his sermon outlines. But what that stands for is, yeah, but how? You know, I know what the Bible says, teach the gospel to every creature. Yeah, but how? That's what we're doing now, is the practical part. Because everybody knows the verse, but it's harder to implement it. So let's go into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What about daily? What's my daily response? If I really want to be an evangelist, what should I try to do every day to save souls? There are two things. One, pray. One is pray. Every day, pray for your list of people. Now, you can decide the frequency even on that, right? Like the psalmist prayed morning, noon, and night. So you might want to put a reminder on your phone that makes your phone buzz. I've got a preacher friend that does that. He stops whatever he's doing when his phone buzzes and prays because he didn't want to forget. I respect that. So you might want to say, okay, I'm going to pray. Is there more power in one prayer or two? Right? So there's power in united prayer. If we had more time to talk about prayer, which I did one night, we didn't get to this. One of the 7 suggestions for prayer is to unite in prayer, which means you give your friend your prospect list and say, would you be praying for these two or for this one that you're working on especially? All right, so that's number 1 is pray. That's Romans 10, 1 to 4. 1 Thessalonians 5:17, Luke 18:1. All those say pray without ceasing or something similar. Ephesians 6:18. Part of the armor of the Christian is prayer. The second thing to do every day is look for an opportunity to invite someone to come Sunday. We touched on that last hour, but this is a daily responsibility. So as you go, you interact with, I think I said last night 1,100. I think it's 1,173 people in a week that we come in contact with. So out of that 1,173 people, surely there are 7 that I could have an opportunity to invite. And let me tell you a story real quick about invitations. I got two stories, quick. One, there was a lady who was baptized into Christ. She was neighbor to a Christian, and she taught her the gospel. But this is the interesting part. When the friend came out of the room where she had changed back into her clothes after the baptism, she hugged the neck of her neighbor and she said, "Did you know you invited me 39 times? And the sister didn't know that. She said, "Yeah, I kept up with it. You invited me 39 times, and I finally said, I got to go." And then she learned the gospel and became a Christian. What if her friend had stopped at 38? What if she had stopped at 1, which is where we might stop, right? Well, I invited them. They said no. No doesn't mean no. No means not right now. That's all it means. It just means not right now. It's like, I can't come this Sunday. Okay. That's fine. I'm going to invite you again. You know, I'm not going to make myself obnoxious to you, but I'm going to invite you again. So look for someone to invite every day. Now, another story real quick. And this is one that was in the Jacksonville church. So we had this couple. They lived beside 2 of our members. And they were the Caseys. The Caseys invited them, next door neighbors, invited them to services several times. But they never came. So the Caseys' neighbor moved across town into a nicer neighborhood, bigger house. And they moved right beside the Nelsons, who were members of the church. And guess what? Shirley and Larry started doing. Inviting them to, what church is that? Jacksonville Church of Christ. Oh, you know the Caseys? Oh yeah, they're members there. We used to live next door to them, you know. So they didn't come immediately, but they kept inviting. Finally, something changed in their lives. They were retired military. And they told me this later, but they said, I don't know which one said to whom, but said, we need more friends, more social activities in our lives. And they said, well, we ought to start church somewhere. Well, what church do you want to go to? Well, why don't we try Larry and Shirley's church? Right? So they did. And by and by, I set up a Bible study with them, went over. And he was converted after 3 studies, as is typical. She was not. She was Catholic and had some issues, trust issues because of what she had experienced in religion early on. She's from Italy. They immigrated over, and we're Roman Catholic, and there was some things that happened when they got here. And but later, this is maybe a year or 2 later, that she was coming. They were both coming all the time, and she was helping in the kitchen. We'd have fellowship meal. She was back there washing dishes and cooking the bread and all. She was a great cook, just like a member, but she wasn't a member yet. Anyway, she called me one day, and she said, Alan, would you baptize me? I don't have time. No. No, I said, of course. So she came up there, and I baptized her. She knew, what she'd known a long time what to do. She said, I'm about to fly to California to see my daughter, and I do not want to get on a plane before I'm baptized. She knew she needed it, right? So she became a Christian. So invite. You see, invite. That's how those people, both of those couples were saved, is somebody invited them. Now, that's number 1. Now, I think I'll go through the individual list, and then I'll go back to the congregation, so we don't go back and forth. That'd be more confusing. So number 2, what about every week? Every week, have a Bible study with someone. Every week. I have a friend who had Tuesday night as his Bible study night. And he kept a Bible study going every Tuesday night. Now, you have to be flexible in that because the person you're studying with may work on nights or whatever, So, like I used to teach Bible studies to college students a good bit because we were in a college town. And you could never study with a college student in the morning. You know why? Yeah, because unless they had a class, they weren't up by that time, right? Because they stayed up late. But you could have a Bible study at night. We had baptisms. I didn't usually teach them. We have baptisms pretty often at 1 or 2 in the morning in the college group because that's when they're studying. That's when they're up. That's when they're alive. But I could usually study in the afternoon between their classes with them, and that worked out really well. And what I would tell them, and you could try this too, is just say we set it up Sunday, say, well, what day this week's good for you? You say, well, I don't have anything Tuesday afternoon. I say, okay, what about Tuesday afternoon at 1? That'd be good. So Tuesday after 1, get to the end of that study and say, okay, as long as you want to study the Bible, Tuesday at 1 o'clock is your slot. I'm available for Tuesdays at 1. So then they just know it, And if I was out of town, I'd tell them the week before if they had something, You could always change it. But that worked out really well. So Tuesday nights, you say, well, next Tuesday night, this is your time. If you want to study next Tuesday night, we'll do the next lesson. It works really well. So you want to try to keep a Bible study going, at least one, but a Bible study going every week. Now, that is Proverbs 11:30. He that winneth souls is wise. I tell you what, you will not have any church growth until you have baptisms. You will not have any baptism until you have studies. You will not have any studies until you have prospects. Did you catch all that? Your church will not grow until you have baptisms. You will not have baptisms until you have studies. You will not have studies until you have prospects. So where do you start? Prospects. That leads to studies, leads to baptism, leads to church growing. And I could tell you right now of churches, I've got 2 in mind right now that I preached a gospel meeting in this first one I'm about to mention. I didn't think I was ever going to get there. It was like this pig trail, it seemed like, curvy road, hill, all this. Finally, turn around a curve, there's this huge church building in the middle of nowhere. 300 members. A church will grow anywhere if the members are working. Because where do all those people come from? I don't know. There weren't 300 people who lived within a mile of the building, I don't think. But they were driving in from, people will drive a ways to a good church, by the way. Yeah, you got a sound church, a good church, act church, loving church. Yeah, people will drive for that. I would. You would. Anybody would, because that's your main part of your life is your church life. All right, so teach a Bible study, have a Bible study going every week. I have a friend that preached, he's an elder now, but he preached in Texas for a long time. Very evangelistic preacher. He went to a congregation years ago, and during his 10 or 11 years there, they baptized 200 people in that church. He was very happy in that congregation, but another church said, we want you to come preach for us. No, we really, really want you to. We need you. No, I don't know. They just, well, come talk to us. So finally he went. And they kept after him. And he finally said, well, I'll tell you what. I'll come be your preacher if you'll agree to this. He's looking at the elders around the table. There's it's a pretty big church, 6 elders. He said, I'll come be your preacher if all of you will agree that you will keep a Bible study going every week. Well, and I will too when I get here. And if you don't have a Bible study scheduled for next week, that you will get up before the congregation and say, brethren, I have an open slot for Bible study this week. I sure would like to study with someone. If anybody's got a friend or a prospect, please come see me. You know what they did? They said, okay. And they did. And that church grew. I've preached there. They have 700 members now. They had to build a new building. And he since retired from preaching, and they've got another preacher whose name, if I called it, you'd probably know it. It's a great church. Bible study every week. Well, I believe in prayer, and I know you believe in prayer, so I will say this also about that. If you want to have a Bible study, ask God for a Bible study to send you someone. If that's a prayer, God's going to answer. May I ask it this way? I sometimes illustrate it this way. If you've got somebody on one side of town, and that person is reading the Bible like the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8, treasurer, and he's saying, I wonder what this means. I really wish I knew what the Bible said. And maybe they say, God, help me understand this. Now, God doesn't hear a sinner's prayer, but does God know that a sinner prayed? Yeah. Does God know that a sinner's heart is open to the truth? Yes. Okay, so you got this person on one side of town saying, God, I really want to know what the Bible says. You got somebody on the other side of town, gets down by his bed or her bed and says, God, lead me to some soul today. Teach me, Lord, just what to say. God, I'd love to have a Bible study. Do you think God could arrange a meeting between those two people? I believe in providence because the Bible teaches it. Romans 8:28, Esther 4:14, a lot of verses. But anyway, Philemon 1:22. I believe that's possible. I could give you stories about that too, about people that knocked on the door. Eric Lyons, you know Eric Lyons? He works for Apologetics Press. If I fall down and hit my head, somebody just take my notes and keep going. He knocked on a door. There's a video of this on the, door knocking day is coming up. Church of Christ door knocking day is coming up maybe next Saturday. Anyway, there's already 600 churches signed up for it, I think, all over the country. Not even only in America, but other places. And we've been doing this for 5 or 6 years. We have baptisms every year from door knocking. But anyway, Eric Lyons made a video about a door knocking that he did before we started this. He said, I knocked on the door, and the lady came and said, he introduced himself. He's from the church, doing Bible studies. You're kidding. He said, no, I'm not kidding. She said, you're kidding. She said, I was just sitting here on the couch talking to, I think it was a daughter, about, I wish somebody would teach us what the Bible says. and you knocked on our door. So, wow. You know? Anyway, your weekly assignment is to have a Bible study. And, okay, let's get a little more practical. How do you do that? Order Open Bible Study. You Google it, Chula Vista Bookstore. I have nothing to do with Chula Vista Bookstore except I know them. They carry them. Other bookstores of the Church of Christ have these. Open Bible Study. Anybody can do it. All you do is read the verse and answer 2 questions. And then you read the next verse and answer 2 questions. It's easy. Anybody can do it. Or order the Joel Miller videos that are now, they've just been updated on HD, and you just put it in your computer and watch the video with the prospect. And there's a book with it, and you can answer the questions. It's easy. Or you can do Back to the Bible, which is another read the verse, answer the question study. It's 4 lessons, I think. Open Bible Studies 3. It usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour to go through one lesson. So generally you do it 1 night a week for 3 weeks. And if you need any more information about any of that, I'll give it to you, because that's where, if you don't have a method to study the Bible with people, you won't study the Bible with people. Because you can't just go in and start talking about the Bible. You'll get all over the map, and they'll ask questions that are going to mess up the study. There are things that you will teach them, they will learn, but they don't need to learn it first. Like they'll ask you about instrumental music. Well, you don't. That's something that you study after you've studied about the authority of the Bible. And that's something you study about after you study about Old Testament and New Testament, the 2 parts of the Bible. So it's logically laid out like that. Okay, a Bible study every week. Number 3, every month, aim to have a baptism every month. This is on the personal level. I know preachers that are doing this. And I know members that do this. A baptism, that's the right frequency, and here's why. If you use Open Bible Study or Back to the Bible, you have either 3 or 4 lessons. So what's the last lesson going to be about in both of those? Or at least, well, in Open Bible Study, it's the 2nd lesson. And 3rd lesson is about worship. But generally, you review the 3rd night. And so that's when the baptism usually takes place. They've had time for it to soak in and to come to grips with what it's saying, so forth. So if you do a Bible study every week, then you will have a baptism every month. You say, yeah, but not everybody's baptized. That's true. It is more than half, though. Most will find it will be in the 70 to 80 percentile that will be baptized, if they go through all the studies. If they stop after the first study, then no. But if they go through the studies, you'll have more than half. So you say, well, that's not one every month. Yeah, but you normally study with a couple, like 2 people, right? Or a couple and a teenager. Sometimes you'll have 3 in your study. You don't want to get it too big because it runs off the rails too easy. But sometimes you can do it that way. But generally 2 people. So if you convert 70% of the people that you study with, you study every week, then you're going to average more than 1 per month, you see. And that's 12 a year. Now I want to make this real for you. How many people can fit on 1 row of this in this building? Did you say? 7? 7 or 8? So just you. If you do what we're talking about here, Bible study every week, baptism every month, you will fill up this pew. And this one will almost be full by 12 months from now. 12 people. You got 5 people in here that do that? You're going to have to look at expanding this auditorium pretty quick, right? Now, it's okay if it's only 3, right? It's okay if it's 1. I mean, that's great. But I'm talking about, this is within the realm of possibility. Now, some people are very good at Bible studies. I know people that baptize 100 people a year doing Bible studies. It's unreal. I mean, that's all they do. It's amazing. The gospel is powerful, and people that have certain skill set, certain personality, they're extremely good at it. But I know anybody can do it. Unless you're that real grumpy guy that people get mad at when you say hello. You know, well, maybe your thing is going to be something besides teaching the Bible studies. But most of us, we know how to deal with people. We got social skills, and we care about people, and we know the Bible. We can do this. All right, so that's your monthly one. And your scripture on that would be Acts 2:38, Mark 16:15, any of the verses on baptism. Acts 8:35 through 38, 1 Peter 3:21, Ephesians 5:26, 27. Acts 22:16. There's a lot of verses. But you don't get to baptism until you get to study. And you don't get to study until you get to prospect. You gotta be building those prospects, like with the connecting and the sharing and all the things we talked about last hour. And then once you get your group of, some of you, well, you were in insurance, some of you are probably in sales. Sales is all about numbers, right? It's about skills, it's about the product, but you gotta, it's the same thing with farming. Alan over here I know is a farmer. So you want more harvest, what do you got to do in the spring? Plant more seeds, right? Because you're not going to have a bigger harvest unless you sow more seeds. Same thing is true with a church. A church that's only got one person doing Bible studies, they'll grow. But it might only equal out to the number of people that move away or die. So you don't really grow. It's new people, new faces. But you want more members, more people sowing. And the person who's sowing more contacts. Like if I got one prospect and it falls through, well, that's not good. But if I got 10 prospects and this one's the one I'm working with now, and now I've got this one in the chute next, and this one, so that's how it works. We just have to be big thinkers and not plant a little garden and expect a big harvest. Let's plant a big garden and have a big harvest. All right, the next one. So that's monthly. What about quarterly? Every quarter have a meal at your house for all your new converts. Not just this year. All your converts. So over time, that'll get bigger. Now, this is where some other people can help you. They can help you by praying for your prospects. They can help you by giving you prospects if you're good at studies and they didn't have one right then. They can help in other ways, but they can help here. Some people are really good cooks. Like I think everybody in this church is a good cook. And some people really like to cook, and they want to participate in good work, but because of their circumstances or whatever, they're not able to do the Bible studies right now. And then maybe they can't invite people in their home because maybe the spouse is not a believer or whatever, some reason. Maybe it's a small house, it couldn't fit everybody. Well, you're going to invite them to your house, but you're like, man, we're sort of strapped. That's going to be expensive to feed these 10 extra people or whatever. Well, just put the word out. We're going to have a new converts meal on last Saturday this month, and would you mind bringing a casserole? Would you bring dessert? And can you cook? you bring drinks. People would love that. And it would also be good for those people to come because they can help serve, but they also will get to know the new members. That 7 friends thing, that facilitates that. So in that meal that you have at your house, and it's not just an hour, eat and leave. It's more like, come over, we're gonna play volleyball or something. I don't know, whatever. Just to have some fun. But also during that time, you're going to talk to them about how's it going. You having any faith struggles? Anybody really giving you a hard time about this? And they're going to get to be friends with the other new members. And we'll say this probably again in a minute, but you need a new converts class in your congregation once you get more than 3 so that they get to know each other and they can ask a lot of questions because they really have a lot. Young children ask a lot of questions, right? They're learning. When new baby Christians ask a lot of questions because they're learning, so give them an outlet for that. It's good for an elder to teach that class or an older member, older man that knows the Bible real well and can field questions and in a lot of subjects. That new converts class. And you might even invite that same guy over to your meal. You sit around in the living room. It's not a formal class. It's just more or less talking. But some of those things will come out and you say, well, I need to be praying for so-and-so because her husband's telling her she can't go to church anymore, or stuff like that. Quarterly, annual. Annual, remember I said this is not for everybody, right? but you want to be a second mile evangelist, go on a mission trip every year. A mission trip. Churches of Christ go on mission trips practically every week of the year. And if you're interested in going, then you can reach out to any preacher will know somebody's taking a group. I could send you to South America or a lot of places with groups that take new people all the time. The best way to do this is for you to save up the money and pay for your own way. If you can do it, do that. If you can't, second best way is to ask your elders. Saying, I've got an opportunity to go on a mission trip to wherever. And it's going to cost, the plane ticket is X number of dollars. They said we have to have this much for food. And it's going to cost total of, say, $2,000. And could the church here help with that? I've got $300 saved that I'm going to put to it. Could the church send me the rest of it? 9 times out of 10, the elders say yes. But if they can't do that, and that's understandable if they couldn't, they'll say, well, we could give you $500. I said, that's good, thank you. And then you reach out to other congregations that you were a member of previously, or that you have a family member that's an elder in or a member of. God will give you the money. Just reach out and get it, right? And then go on a mission trip. So you're carrying the gospel locally, but that allows you to carry the gospel globally somewhere. There are also stateside campaigns every summer. Like, for instance, I've got a friend that leads a campaign up to Wisconsin most summers, out to Texas the last 3 years, helping with the little churches that really can accelerate their contacts. All right, now let me move over. I don't want to miss lunch, so. So nobody let me miss lunch, right? Well, it's an agreement we got here. But let me go through. I don't think it'll take. We'll have an early lunch. How about that? Maybe. Let's do the congregation level. So the same frequencies, what do we do as a church to be an evangelistic church? Daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. All right, so daily, what do we do as a church? We have a prayer group in the congregation. What do you mean by that? A Facebook members only group, a text group, where the evangelists in your congregation that have prospects and Bible studies going on, let's just say Pam had a Bible study, and she might say today, text to that group or post to Facebook and say, I've got a Bible study with Sheila tomorrow night at 7. Everybody be praying about that, because this is our third study, and I'm really hoping that she makes her decision. Or someone might post and say, I got a Bible study with my friend John, but John's a little hung up on instrumental music. And we're going to be talking about that. Everybody be praying about him accepting the truth on the whole truth. Like that. So you got a group, and you can post to that every day. That you're facilitating prayer, and that's not for the world to know. They don't see those posts. They don't know that, but it's for the group to know, the members. Then your weekly assignment as a congregation is to talk about evangelism. I don't mean preach about it. I just mean before the Sunday morning Bible class, for instance, or the Wednesday night class, before we have our first prayer, somebody says, anybody got a Bible study going on this week you want us to pray about in our first? Somebody says, yeah, I got a study going right now, or I'm hoping to get a study with, so be praying about that, and so we're facilitating it by thinking about it. Whatever is in front of the church thinks about and does. If we never talk about evangelism, then we don't do it, because we got to talk about it to get it in the minds of the people. That's one reason it bothers me. This is a pet peeve. It has nothing to do with this lesson, but except for it's an illustration. It bothers me when preachers preach a sermon and then they don't even give the Lord's invitation. I'm like, why are we preaching? If you want baptisms, you need to tell people what to do to obey the gospel and to be baptized, and encourage them to do it, or to respond and be restored. Yeah. So what we put in front of people is important. What we ask for, what we teach about, it's all important. I'm not saying a person's a sinner if they don't do that this next sermon. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying purpose should be in the forefront. And purpose of The church is to save souls. So that ought to be a part of every Sunday. All right, third is monthly. Every month, this is about preaching. Every month, have an evangelistic sermon. There's any number of ways to go about that. You could preach for the first quarter just on Luke 15 about evangelism. That's a great chapter. It's a lot there. So, once a month, don't hammer it down people's throats every sermon, but once a month, circle around and talk about evangelism, some aspect of it. It might be answering a question, questions that come up in evangelistic studies. Like, how do you answer, well, what about the thief on the cross? That could be a whole sermon. That's an evangelistic sermon. Especially if you approach it like, you may have been asked this, or if you're having Bible studies, you will be asked this. So you just planted the idea about Bible studies again. And then you talk about thief on the cross. Because that's always the drop mic answer, right? It's like, well, you don't have to be baptized, thief on the cross, boom, walk off, that's it. Well, there's an answer to that. The thief on the cross is not a Baptist verse or a Protestant verse, right? It's I believe, Luke, 23:39. I believe it 100%. What does it mean? Well, that's what you talk about in that sermon. So have an evangelistic sermon. Every quarter, what do? Every quarter, have an event to give members an excuse to invite their friends. We invite people every Sunday, but you do better if you got a reason for them to come. For instance, let me give you some, maybe 4, 5, 6 ideas. Once a quarter, have an event that is targeted for non-members to come, like Family Friend Day. And so this lady we talked about a little while ago, when her mom, it's like, Mom, we're having Family Day, and I don't want to sit by myself. Would you come over this weekend? Don't do it the weekend before. Tell her, ahead of time. But why don't you come over and you can go with me? And you might have a photographer in the congregation that takes everybody's pictures for free. Have a meal together, and that gives her a chance to meet those people you've been talking about. Family Friend Day. Number 2, what about Grandparents' Day? Somebody that's hard to say no to is a grandkid, right? Paul, would you come to church with me Sunday? Paul might not have been in church in 10 years, but he's going to have a hard time saying no to a grandkid, right? So, what do you preach about that Sunday? Well, preach about the value of families. And listen, like the Proverbs that talk about the law of the mother or the law of the father, what the father's teaching. Talk about things that will help him to buy in, but you have the plan of salvation. You might even talk about the prodigal son, and we'll talk about him tonight. That's a good verse. So anyway, Family Friend Day. Grandparents' Day. What about gospel meetings at VBSs are good opportunities. Also, we learned that you could have a seminar on certain subjects. The one that we got the most to come to was dinosaurs. We were across the street from a state university. We had some professors that came to that. We had PhD scientists, like 6 of them. Apologetics Press mostly. Members of the church, faithful Christians, and they came. They all spoke in their area of expertise. Like one was an astrophysicist. I can't talk to that guy much because he's way up here, No, he's a nice guy. You can talk to him, but smart guy. And one guy went to Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Just about can't get higher than that. He has a degree from there. A NASA scientist too. Anyway, you invite those guys in. That was sort of an expensive weekend to fly those guys in. But boy, we had people come, and it was good for our kids who were being told about dinosaurs and all this stuff. And then they have these scientists come in and say, dinosaurs weren't 1 million years ago. God made them on day number 6. There's probably some little dinosaurs on the ark, but they died out at some point, just like a lot of other species have died out over the years. There's answers to all that, but our young people don't know it unless we say it. Now, the preacher can say it, and we should, but sometimes it's good to bring in a guy. But that was also an opportunity to reach out to people and bring them in on something they're interested in. You also can use parenting, because a lot of people are struggling right now with their kids. And you say, we're going to have a weekend on parenting skills. And you got some young people, young families that will come in and say, man, I need this for sure. Maybe marriage enrichment. I'm doing one out in somewhere about an overview of the Bible. People are interested in learning. It's fun to learn. So have something on, something they can learn from. All right, the next one is, that's enough on you can come up with your own ideas. There's plenty of ideas. And the best ideas come from other churches. So just steal their ideas. That's the best thing to do. They already worked out the kinks, right? So do what they did. Now don't steal dumb ideas. Don't steal liberal ideas, but steal good ideas. All right, the next one is, that's quarterly, so annually. As a congregation, what should we do annually to get the word out? Have a door-knocking canvassing. Maybe participate in door-knocking day. That gives you a memory tool to always have it, and have it about the same time every year. A door-knocking day. So I know a guy, I preached in Sikeston, Missouri, years ago now. And there's a guy, he was on staff. I don't know if he was full-time or not, but he was an evangelist. He was an amazing guy. He did Bible studies like all the ways we've been talking about, but whenever he didn't have a study, he'd go door knocking. And he'd go door knocking. He told me this. I talked to him for a good while. He said, I go door knocking when it's raining and when it's really cold. I said, what? Why? He said, because if people see you in the rain, they will listen to you. If they see you're out there in the cold, they see how seriously you're taking it. Man, that struck me, I thought. Wow. He baptized a lot of people. So, are we serious about it? I'm not saying you got to wait for it to rain to go door knocking. But I am saying that people can see our devotion, and they should. And I know that certain religious groups have have hindered door knocking because they're aggressive and they're all that, right? But don't dress like them when you go, and don't act like them. Just be a friend. And door knocking is much more effective, while I'm on this. Door knocking is much more effective if you don't just go up there and give them a flyer to the meeting. That's good, that's fine. Or a tract, that's good. Say something like this. We're from the Church of Christ, and we're out just getting to know our neighbors. And we're just, right up there. We got to thinking we hadn't even met all of our neighbors, and that's not being very neighborly. So we're out meeting our neighbors and offering our services. If there's anything the church could do for you, we would appreciate it if you'd let us know. And you can ask this. I'm going to show you how not to ask it and how to ask it. Don't say, we're doing projects, do you have anything you'd like for us to do? Say, do you know anybody in the community that could use some help with yard work or cutting a tree down, or they won't feel like they won't ask for it, but they'll say, yeah, my neighbor, she's about to hire a guy for $800 to cut down that tree right there because she couldn't have anybody to do it. Really? Well, we'll go talk to her. And she'd go over there and say, your neighbor said this tree needs to come down, and we got people in church. We're from the church, and explain all that. Say, if you want us to, we'll come back with our chainsaws. We'll knock that thing down for you. It won't cost you a nickel. We just want to help. And she'll cry and say, thank you. I didn't have the money for it. Right? Yeah. Help people. Another thing you can do is when you knock on the door, say, we're from the Church of Christ and we're out meeting our neighbors. We're praying. We believe in prayer. We believe our country really needs prayer right now. And you might feel that way too. Oh, yeah. Well, is there anything you want us to pray for you? And sometimes people break down and cry right there and say, my son is ... I mean, there's a lot of things going on. Just got arrested for drugs, or has a surgery coming up, or is going through a divorce, or they're about to file for bankruptcy. You know, there's a lot of things going on in people's lives. And it might be themselves they ask you to pray for. It might be somebody they know. And then be sure to write it down. Get the name, if they'll give it, and what you prayed about. And then go back and pray more about it and send them a card and say, I've been praying for you, just hoping things are working out. Now that's tilling the soil to plant the seed. You got to earn the right to have a Bible study. The days of just cold turkey Bible studies, there's not many of those anymore. You got to earn the right to have a Bible study. One way you do that is to be a servant. We're going to talk more about putting on the towel of service in the next session, but that's an introduction to it. All right. Anybody be mad if we finished early? All right. Anybody have a question? I guess we'll take a minute for a question if you want to ask, and then we'll have a prayer for our food, I guess. I'll turn it over to Rod if nobody has a question. Like, it's the wrong time to ask for questions when you're competing with food, right? It's like, don't anybody ask a question. I want to go eat. Bill.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I am glad a Christian knocked on my door.
Mm-hmm.
A Christian knocked on my door. So door knocking works.
And that's how you became a member?
Because here,
Wow.
I'm a product of a door knocking campaign.
Isn't that something?
I'm a product.
Wow.
So,
It does work. It's the devil. It's the devil's lie that door knocking doesn't work. And I'll tell you, it's also people that don't want to do it don't want to say, I don't want to do it. They will say it doesn't work, you know, because I don't want to go out there. I'm nervous about it. And I get that. I get it. But don't stop somebody else from doing something good because you don't want to participate. You don't have to participate, but don't say it doesn't work, you know. I'll tell you this before we'll end, unless somebody else got it. Anybody else got a question? Okay, one more here. I'll come back to that.
For the quarterly thing, you said have an event to have members invite their friends, and then you listed other things, but is that?
Those are the
a worship
events.
thing?
Yeah, it's a Sunday thing. Yeah, invite them Sunday. So those are the events. Some of them are more than Sunday, like a VBS or a meeting, but most of those are on, invite them. Like Sunday, if you're going to have a family friend day. So you say Sunday, October or November 3rd is our family day or homecoming day, and everybody invite your friends. Don't come without inviting some. Bring somebody with you. Sort of make it fun and make it a challenge. And then who you bringing? Who you bringing Sunday? And Dave's going, but if you ask him that 3 weeks in a row, then the last time you ask him, he's going to say, that's how it works. We encourage each other that way. So those are events. Because what you want is if you've been working on a neighbor, wanting them to come to services, and you say, well, can you come Sunday? And you don't have anything going on. But if you have something like, yeah, it's a big day, it's our homecoming. And we're going to have a meal, dinner on the grounds, we got a guest speaker, whatever, Make it like something special to come to. That's the idea. All right, real quick on the door knocking thing. The director of Memphis School of Preaching is B.J. Clark. He tells this story. I've heard it several times. He said that his dad was out of the church and not in a good way. And I know his dad too. And he said Joe Crocker, that's the guy's name, knocked on his door. Set up a study. Ted became a preacher. B.J. became a preacher and now directs a school of preaching. And his son, Michael, is a preacher. And probably Adam will one day be a preacher, his grandson. Because Joe Crocker knocked on a door. God can use that. I'm not up here promoting door knocking. I think there's a lot of ways to, but that's one way. It's one way. All right, I'll turn it over to Rod. You want to lead our prayer? Amen.